5:18 a.m. The Pacific Ocean. A 43 million-old luxury yacht drifting in the dark. A Somali pastor with a global reputation for charity. Hidden chambers, missing people, and offshore routes no one ever questioned. Tons of narcotics moved across the Pacific under the cover of faith. Want to know how deep this goes? Hit like and I'll show you everything. 3:42 a.m. 118 miles off the coast of California. The Pacific Ocean lay completely still. No engines, no fishing boats, no passing freighters. In that emptiness drifted a massive white yacht, a $43 million vessel glowing softly in the dark. Its lights looked warm, almost inviting, but the silence around it felt controlled, as if whatever lived inside it did not want the sea to hear. On paper, the yacht belonged to Pastor Bashir Abdulahi Warsim, 55. A respected Somali pastor praised for charity work, relief missions, and faith-based outreach. Communities spoke his name with admiration, some with devotion. But the ocean told a different story. For months, federal analysts tracked the vessel as it avoided crowded waters, refused dock inspections, and traveled almost entirely at night, following winding routes used by ships that preferred not to be seen. Then, anomalies appeared. Surveillance screens detected faint heat signatures beneath the lower deck, appearing, vanishing, returning again like movement inside sealed space whenever sensors drew near. And on the wind drifted a sharp, sterile chemical odor, antiseptic, unnatural, seeping from the rear compartments, like a warning no one had spoken aloud. If you want me to continue this investigation, tap like and tell me in the comments. Go deeper. When analysts turned to the financial records, the facade collapsed further. Over 7 years, over $186 million in temporary relief grants moved through organizations tied to Bashir's network. Charities with no staff, no offices, no activity beyond renewal filings. Some existed only in databases, approved again and again as if paperwork alone was enough to keep them alive. Then came the files that unsettled investigators most. Volunteer rosters listed names and photographs. But many identities had no work history, no housing trail, no medical record. In several cases, the final trace connected to coastal transit points linked to narcotics corridors, and then disappeared entirely as if lives had been absorbed into a route that never recorded returns. One audit uncovered 39 shell charities whose small transfers, harmless in isolation together, exceeded $620 million in redirected flows that vanished within days. Bank patterns mirrored narcotic seizure timelines along West Coast routes. The same months, the same movement cycles, the same unexplained currency surges across dozens of approvals, the same phrase repeated. Approved under faith-based relief authority. Identical spacing, identical punctuation, not a blessing, a mechanism. Shipping logs delivered the final alignment. The yacht's manifests, labeled private ministry materials, carried weight discrepancies consistent with high-volume narcotics packaging. Several routes matched offshore exchange zones already tied to Pacific trafficking lanes. What once looked like charity now resembled a pipeline, quiet, protected, systematic. And investigators understood this was not merely financial deception, but a narcotics network built inside the language of faith. Do you think this was a humanitarian mission or a pipeline? Comment below. It was 5:18 a.m. when the winds began to rise over the Pacific. The sky was still dark, but the first thin line of dawn touched the far edge of the horizon. The ocean was restless, rolling in long, heavy waves far below that moving surface. Engines hummed quietly, the kind of deep vibration that signaled more than routine patrol. FBI and DEA units had been following Pastor Bashir's yacht for nearly 6 hours, staying outside radar range, moving with the water, waiting for the final command. At 5:21 a.m., the order came through every headset at once. There were no alarms, no sirens, the pastor's double-life only movement. 3 federal vessels approached the yacht from different angles, cutting through the water with steady, disciplined force. From above, a Coast Guard reconnaissance aircraft circled in silence, marking the exact shape and position of the target. The federal teams had rehearsed this moment for weeks. Now the real operation had begun. On the yacht, lights flickered on suddenly. Automatic shutters locked over several cabin windows. A metallic echo rang across the deck. Not loud, but sharp enough to signal that someone inside knew what was coming. The boarding team struck first. Ropes dropped onto the starboard side. Boots hit the deck with controlled precision. The agents moved quickly, forming two lines that advanced toward the central corridor. Salt water sprayed across the metal railings as the waves slammed harder against the hull. Inside the yacht, narrow hallways twisted like a maze. Doors were reinforced. Several were sealed electronically. One agent forced entry and was pushed backward by a door rigged to swing shut with violent force. Another team encountered a darkened room filled with smoke from a disorienting device, triggered automatically the moment they crossed the threshold. Visibility was low. The air smelled of chemicals and seawater. Commanders repeated instructions again and again. Steady, calm, direct, keeping the teams focused as they moved deeper into the vessel. On the lower deck, resistance intensified. Two men attempted to block the main passage using heavy storage crates. Federal teams advanced slowly, pushing forward inch by inch as the yacht rocked under their feet. The sounds were chaotic but controlled. The slam of restraints, the thud of feet on metal flooring, the crackling interference of radio signals bouncing off steel walls. The confrontation lasted 8 minutes, long enough to feel endless in tight quarters, short enough to show that the defenders had been trained to delay, not overpower. When the final cabin door opened, the resistance stopped. The lower deck fell silent once more, except for the sound of the ocean striking the hull. The yacht was now under federal control, but the agents knew this was only the beginning. Whatever Pastor Bashir had built inside this $43 million vessel was not meant to be discovered easily. And the deeper they went, the darker the truth became. When the last echo of the confrontation faded, the yacht grew strangely quiet. The ocean rose and fell in slow breaths, as if the sea itself was waiting to see what the agents would uncover. Flashlights cut through the dark hallways, gliding across polished wood panels, gold-plated handles, and thick carpets that looked too expensive for a simple ministry vessel. But luxury was only the surface. On the main deck, agents found a room arranged like a private chapel. Soft lights glowed over a small wooden altar. Rows of folded robes lay neatly on a bench. Everything looked peaceful, almost comforting. But something felt wrong. The air carried a chemical scent that did not belong in a place of worship. Then one agent noticed the floor. The wooden planks did not match the curvature of the wall. A thin seam ran across the base of the altar, too straight, too perfect. When they lifted the platform, the deception finally cracked open. Beneath the chapel was a hidden storage chamber reinforced with steel plating. Inside were dozens of large transport containers stacked in rows and strapped tightly to prevent movement at sea. Each container was sealed with industrial locks, the kind used in commercial shipping. None of them carried identification labels. The first container opened slowly. Inside were vacuum-sealed packages arranged in layers, their contents tested and confirmed within minutes. High-purity narcotics linked to offshore manufacturing routes. The markings matched shipments seized months earlier along the West Coast. But here, the scale was far greater. A second chamber revealed something even darker. Along one wall stood a series of metal cabinets containing identification cards, travel documents, and encrypted phones. Many documents bore no return address. Others showed foreign embarkation points known for migrant exploitation. At the far end, agents found clothing bundles, water containers, and personal items, enough for more than a dozen people. Nothing suggested comfort. Everything suggested movement. This was not a place for worship. This was a transit point. And then came the most disturbing discovery. Behind a curved panel near the engine room was a narrow staircase leading to a sealed compartment that did not appear in the yacht's blueprints. The door was heavy and cold with scratches along the frame, as if someone had pulled at it repeatedly when the lock finally gave night surveillance triggered way. The room inside was small, windowless, and built with reinforced steel. Along the floor were thin mattresses, a ventilation unit, and restraints bolted directly into the metal. It was clear this chamber was designed to hold people, not passengers, not guests, people who were never meant to be seen. The agents stood in silence. The sound of the engine, still cooling from the confrontation, filled the hallway with a low, trembling hum. Every step deeper into the yacht revealed another layer of deception. Another boundary Pastor Bashir had crossed while the world believed he was a man of faith. The truth was no longer hidden beneath the waves. It had been built into the ship itself. Once the yacht was secured, investigators sent the first evidence logs to the command center on shore. The numbers were startling, but the patterns behind them were even more alarming. What began as a raid on a single vessel now pointed toward something much larger, an offshore system that had grown quietly for years without attracting attention. Analysts reviewing the documents discovered a chain of companies connected to Pastor Bashir. Some were registered in California, others in Washington state, but the majority existed in distant island jurisdictions known for secrecy. Many had been opened and closed within 18 months. None had office locations. None had staff. Yet together, they had processed nearly $410 million in maritime relief operations. No one had asked where the ships were. No one had asked who the relief crews were supposed to be. The deeper investigators dug, the clearer the picture became. The yacht acted as the central moving hub, but it was far from the only vessel involved. Records showed 8 additional boats, all smaller, operating under neutral flags. Their journeys overlapped with the yacht's route, stopping at the same quiet coves in the Pacific, the same private docks along Mexico's coastline, and the same supply points in international waters where no authority routinely patrols. Shipping manifests revealed that these boats regularly exchanged sealed cargo with one another. Cargo labeled as donation supplies, medical kits, or community development materials. In reality, the amounts listed almost never matched the weight the vessels carried. Some runs showed discrepancies of over 4,000 pounds per trip. Over time, the total weight mismatch surpassed 1.6 million pounds, far too large to be a clerical error. But the most revealing evidence did not involve money or cargo. It involved communication. Recovered devices from the yacht contained message logs linking Pastor Bashir to intermediaries in Kenya, Djibouti, and southern Turkey, regions with known trafficking corridors. The conversations were careful, written in coded phrases, but the patterns were unmistakable. Travel schedules aligned with missing persons reports. Cargo turnovers matched narcotics distribution cycles in several states. And then there were the volunteer lists. On paper, they looked like rosters for humanitarian trips, names, ages, nationalities, destinations, but many of the individuals listed had never boarded commercial flights. Several had been reported missing by family members years earlier. Others were minors with no guardians attached to their files. Every document pointed to the same truth. The yacht was only the front door of a multi-layered offshore pipeline, a network built not through violence, but through reputation, routine, and the quiet confidence that no one would ever question a man who spoke in the language of faith. For the agents, it was a sobering realization. They had not uncovered the full network. They had only broken its surface, and beneath that surface was a system organized, patient, and built to last. By late afternoon, the Pacific Ocean had returned to its calm rhythm. The waves rose gently and fell again as if nothing unusual had taken place. From a distance, the $43 million yacht looked the same as it had at dawn, white, polished, and peaceful. But inside, the truth had already changed everything. Evidence teams continued working long after the raid ended. Every drawer, every storage room, every hidden compartment was photographed, sealed, and logged. The number of seized items grew by the hour. Documents, electronics, identification records, transport lists, and thousands of digital files waiting to be decoded. Each piece told a small part of a much bigger story. On shore, analysts began the federal boarding, begins sorting the recovered data. They traced connections between Pastor Bashir's offshore companies and a patchwork of organizations across 3 continents. Contracts referenced non-existent clinics. Invoices pointed to shipping routes that had never been inspected. Bank statements showed transfers that moved across borders within minutes. The totals climbed quickly. More than $620 million in combined financial flows scattered through accounts that now appeared frozen, silent, and suspicious. But the most unsettling discovery was not the money or the cargo. It was how easily the system had accepted everything. Charities processed the pastor's requests because his reputation seemed trustworthy. Maritime authorities approved his sailing routes because the paperwork appeared complete. Religious organizations welcomed his projects because his name carried respect. Month after month, year after year, no one questioned the pattern. No one looked past the documents. No one connected the pieces. It had not been chaos hiding in the shadows. It had been order hiding in plain sight. Investigators understood the weight of this realization. The raid had stopped the yacht. It had disrupted the network, but it had not erased the habits, the assumptions, and the quiet routines that had allowed the operation to grow in the first place. Reform would take time, months, maybe years. Systems built on trust do not change overnight, and communities that believed in Pastor Bashir would need space to understand how deeply their faith had been used against them. As the sun began to set, the agents on the deck paused for a moment. The sea glowed orange beneath the fading light. The yacht stood still, no longer a symbol of wealth or charity, but a reminder of how easily kindness can be copied, how easily trust can be shaped into a shield. There were no cheers, no celebration, only a quiet acceptance. The operation had ended, but the reckoning had just begun. What had been uncovered was more than a crime. It was a warning, one carried gently by the evening tide across the open water, back toward a coastline that would soon learn the truth. Sometimes danger does not roar. Sometimes it whispers in the language of faith, order, and routine. By the time federal teams completed their final sweep of the yacht, the Pacific sky had turned a pale gray. The storm clouds had thinned, but the air still carried the smell of salt, metal, and the quiet weight of everything discovered on board. The vessel no longer drifted freely across international waters. It waited, anchored in place, surrounded by patrol craft and guarded silence. On the upper deck, agents gathered the individuals taken into custody during the raid. Some refused eye contact. Others stared out toward the horizon, as if the ocean itself might still offer escape. Among them stood Pastor Bashir Abdulahi Warsim, 55. Not at a pulpit, not before a congregation, but beneath a gray morning sky, his wrists restrained, his expression unreadable. He did not shout. He did not plead. He simply watched the sea. For investigators, the questions were no longer about one yacht or one operation. They were about the years that had allowed it to exist. The inspectors who trusted signatures, the agencies that cleared travel routes, the donors who believed every public speech, every press release, every carefully repeated phrase about compassion and relief. The ocean had carried truth farther than any report ever had. As technicians sealed the final evidence containers, one analyst quietly read aloud the labels recorded across multiple manifests, the same wording repeated again and again. Humanitarian exchange transport. Identical spacing, identical punctuation, not faith, procedure, and procedure unchecked, had turned into protection. The morning breeze moved across the deck, lifting the thin edges of confiscated documents taped inside evidence folders. The sea below rolled slowly, as if exhaling what it had held for too long. Hidden cargo, missing names, and the quiet routes that traveled across the water in darkness. For the first time, those routes had been forced into the light, and the question that remained was no longer about what the yacht had carried, but how many more vessels, like it, were still out there, drifting in silence. By nightfall, the ocean had returned to its quiet rhythm. The waves rose and fell beneath the anchored yacht, as if the sea itself had finished telling a story it had carried for years. Federal vessels remained positioned around the ship, their lights reflecting across the dark water, like silent witnesses to a truth no longer hidden beneath the surface. Evidence crates were stacked in careful rows. Digital drives were sealed. Identification records, transport manifests, encrypted devices, all marked, cataloged, preserved. But what lingered most was not the paperwork or the numbers. It was the realization, the hidden rooms below, of how deeply trust had been imitated and how easily compassion had been turned into a shield. For years, Pastor Bashir's image had been wrapped in the language of mercy, charity missions, relief programs, faith-based outreach. Communities spoke his name with respect. People believed his speeches, his promises, his carefully chosen words about hope and salvation. But the truth inside the yacht revealed something else. Kindness had been copied, faith had been rehearsed, and systems built on trust had never questioned the performance. Investigators understood that their raid had stopped a vessel, but not the pattern. Forms would still be approved, papers would still look legitimate, and somewhere another reputation might one day try to hide behind the same curtain of benevolence and authority. The lesson was not about anger. It was about awareness. Compassion remains one of humanity's greatest strengths, but it must walk beside accountability. Charity should heal. It should protect. It should lift people from danger, not move them deeper into it under the cover of generosity and prayer. As the last team stepped off the deck, the night breeze swept gently across the open sea. The yacht no longer symbolized wealth or moral prestige. It stood instead as a quiet warning that corruption does not always announce itself with chaos or violence. Sometimes it speaks softly. Sometimes it smiles. Sometimes it wears the language of faith. And sometimes it travels across the water in silence. If you believe truth should never hide behind titles, if you believe compassion must never be used as a mask, tap like to push this investigation further. Common justice to stand with accountability and share the story so more people can see what was hidden beneath the waves.